Those of you that may not know me, my name's Rich Waterman. I've been borderline obsessed with mindset and performance for the best part of 20 years now. And I wanted to describe a new planning framework that I came up with, partly by accident, actually, between Christmas and New Year, just gone. So I've started to develop a habit um, between Christmas and New Year of taking myself away somewhere different and planning out my year ahead and what do I want from that year, which I think is a good thing to do, smart thing to do. It's certainly better than New Year's resolutions anyway. But anyway, this year I went away and I realized that I had become somewhat uncomfortable with the way that I was planning things out. And I felt like I needed something that a bit more resonates with me and I felt was a bit more efficient. So I actually spent most of the day where I should have actually been planning and coming up with a new framework. And I thought I'd share that with you. I don't think it's anything particularly revolutionary. I think it's something that I found very, very helpful. I think you can pick out elements of it that work best for you. And it's 7 steps, very simple. And I'll talk you through how I've done it. I dare say it will evolve over time as I tend to do with these tools and techniques. So let me just share my screen with you. And I've called it planning with rrrst. So for those of you who do know me, you know that I'm mildly inappropriate and it makes me laugh and I remember things. It also was a function of the 7 steps. They kind of naturally fell into this pattern that made me laugh. I couldn't come up with a clever word or anything. So planning with rrrst. The first thing I did was I started to think about, do I want to go through kind of traditional sectors of my life, like health, like business, like finances, like relationships, like hobbies, etc.? Do I want to go through those and look at each of those in terms of planning for 2026 or whatever year you're now looking at? Or did I want to take a different approach? And I decided that I would take a different approach. So what I've actually done is started to look at what are areas of focus. So the first thing I started with is what has been getting my attention. So, for example, I'm a type 2 diabetic. I've been working very hard on improving my blood sugars recently. So that's been getting my attention. I think probably the organization and tidiness of my office space and also my bedroom space has been getting my attention. Um, Developing a gym habit has got my attention. Creating new business and new business income streams has been. So I wanted to recognize those and plan those out for the year ahead. Then I started to look at, well, what actually is important to me, because some of those areas might really not be, so I should probably drop them. And then from that, what needs my attention? So I might have been thinking about it, but not really focusing on it yet. So really what I was looking for was a number of areas of my life that I could plan out and work on and give them the energy and attention that they deserve without having so many that I don't really do many of them well. So then I thought, oh, well, what framework can I develop from this? And I'll be totally honest, I came up with 4 areas by myself, and then I've got a chat GPT that I've trained to think like me. And it came up with 3 more that with a bit of adjustment, I was happy with the framework. So let me talk you through that right now. So it's 3 R's, 1 S, 3 T's, arsed, because it makes me laugh, right? I apologize if you're offended by things like that. Maybe I don't. So the first R is role. So this thing that I'm focusing on, let's say, is blood sugars. What role does that play in my life? In other words, why is that important in my life? So, for example, with blood sugars, when they're not good, very variable energy, sometimes blurred vision, pins and needles in my feet, I feel uncomfortable. When it's going well, great consistent energy. I feel like I'm living to my full potential, things like that. So role's really important, I think, because when you're planning out something, your brain will more naturally engage with it when the why is important. And this role is, what role does it play in my life? I think it's really important. The second R is reality. And that is, where is it right now? Where is this area right now? And I want to really do that with as little emotion or judgment as possible. So, what is the reality of the situation? If you've got credit card debt, what is that number rather than judging yourself like, oh, I shouldn't have let it get that high, or my income should be higher. You just go, my income is this, my credit card debt is that, my blood sugars are that. It's just a statement of fact, right? Reality. The third R is review. So by review, with these things that are existing things, I think great review questions are what is working well in this area? And I would always start with the positives first. And then the second one would be what isn't working so well in this area. If you're potentially starting a new area of focus using this model, I think you could think of what do I expect to work well in this area, and also what do I think might be challenging or problematic in this area. So that review thing is important because then you're getting a sense of things that are kind of moving the dial, as it were. So if it's working well, do more of that or do it more consistently. If it's not working well, maybe change it. I'll talk about that more in a later step, but I think that review is important. I think the next two steps might be the most important steps. Certainly, I felt they've had a significant impact on where I'm at. So let me talk you through the next two. So the S is standards or non-negotiable. So I think when people have areas that work well in their life, they either deliberately or unconsciously have high standards in that areas or what I call non-negotiables, things that you will always do. And I think when people are struggling in areas of their life, often they have no standards or they don't stick to the standards or they have excuses around the standards. So it doesn't become non-negotiable anymore. It becomes like a nice to have. And generally, I've found when people are trying to transform the quality of their lives, that actually nice to haves generally don't work very well. So I have very few, but very firm standards or non-negotiables. And I think linked to that, then the first T is thinking and being. So what I've noticed, I've had a fairly difficult few years actually personally, and what I've noticed, and it's been particularly noticeable in the last month or so, is that the more I can make my thinking being focused on being kind to myself and what do I want, that I've tended to be able to eliminate so-called negative or um, thinking that's deleterious or not helpful for me. So this kindness and believing in self peace. So really, a lot of thinking might be turning around any negative or unhelpful thoughts back to okay, well, what do I want? What's helpful for me? And then the being bit is more living, kind of living that identity, living it consistently, um, being that person, knowing that you can be that person. I think thinking and being and the previous one standards are probably the key things in this 7 step process, but equally the others are very supportive as well. If we move to the second T, this I think is particularly important if you're a smart person and don't like the kind of the hustle and grind and the push, 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 go, go, go thing. And it's tipping point or leverage. So I think this whole hustle and grind, pushing yourself hard, um, just chucking a load of hard work at something, while it's sometimes useful on occasion, what that does is kind of, if you're smart, eliminates your competitive advantage in that area. So what I'd rather look at is I call them minimal viable habits, which is what is the kind of the 20% that I can do that has 80% of the impact in this area. So I'm looking for leverage, I'm looking for the tipping point, I'm looking for, if I'm short on energy or I don't feel well or I'm short on time or maybe short on money, what are the minimal viable habits that I can resort to that are going to give me the biggest bang for my buck? And I think if you're a smart person, that can be highly motivating because you feel like you're being very efficient. And it also enables you potentially to be good at many areas at once because you're not throwing as much time and energy or money at something. And then the final T is really important. You need to bring this into reality. So I call this test and tweak. So you got to go, I think this approach will work, like with my blood sugars. I believe that lowering my sort of snacking carbs, getting to the gym often, going for a walk after big meals, I believe those things are going to be helpful for my blood sugars. So I've got to test that. I've got to run that. And then I've got to get feedback. I've got to look at the results I'm getting. And then importantly is with that feedback, do I need to tweak something? And particularly if you've got the sort of brain I've got, which is a kind of an ADHD type brain, is evolving, refreshing, keeping it interesting. That tweaking bit's really important because otherwise you're in danger of getting bored with the habits and then stopping them, sometimes unconsciously. So that's the rrrst model. What role does this area of focus play in my life? Where am I currently at? No judgment or emotion. review what's working, what isn't working, what are the few very strong standards and non-negotiables that I want to have in this area. What does my positive thinking need to be? Cut down on negative thinking. How am I being this on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis? Look for your bang for your buck, your tipping point or leverage, and then bring it into reality. You can't think about it, you've got to do it. So you've got to test it, and then you've got to tweak and evolve. And that's the ARS model. Thank you very much for listening. Um, Please comment, please give me feedback on how you found this. And equally, if you've taken the time to watch the end of this video, I'm going to put a link into my Calendly, my online appointment stuff, and please feel free to book in 30 minutes with me and we can talk through this further and make it bespoke for you. Hope that was useful. Thank you very much. And I will see you on the next video, whenever that may be. Bye for now.